Today, we're going to talk about an idea that sounds completely backwards. The idea that economies might actually need recessions. I know, it goes against everything we feel about what a healthy economy should be. So let's get into it. I mean, that's the big question, right? Are recessions just failures? For most of us, the answer feels like a clear yes. It feels like the whole system is broken, like it's failing us. Because when we hear the word recession, our minds jump straight to the real human cost. And the first thing we think of is, of course, job losses. And that's followed by this general feeling of uncertainty. You know, people get nervous about spending money, companies put big projects on hold, and the future just feels foggy. And when you put all of that together, what do you get? You get fear. It's a totally natural reaction to all that instability. But what if that's not the entire picture? Okay, so here is the idea that flips everything on its head. This thought suggests that recessions aren't just random accidents. They're actually a built-in structural part of how modern economies work. And that single idea, well, it changes everything. To really get our heads around this, we need to break it down. And we're going to start with the absolute basics in our first section, defining economic contraction. So let's just strip away all the emotion for a second and look at this simple textbook definition. A recession is just a period of reduced economic activity. That means lower production, falling incomes, and less spending. Notice that it's just a description of what's happening. It's not a judgment that says it's a failure. And that period of reduced activity, it's part of a much bigger, more predictable pattern, which brings us to our next piece of the puzzle, the expansion-contraction cycle. See, a modern economy doesn't just grow in a straight line. It moves more like a wave. First, you have the expansion, when everything is growing. But that growth isn't always perfect. It creates imbalances and inefficiencies. That's what leads to step 3, the contraction, or the recession, which is actually the economy correcting itself. And after that correction, you get a reset, which prepares the ground for healthy growth to start all over again. So here's the really interesting part, figuring out how the good times actually plant the seeds for the bad times. So let's look at how good times create these imbalances. Just think about it. When things are going really well for a long time, people get optimistic, maybe a little too optimistic. Businesses and individuals start taking on more and more risk. People start making investments based on just a feeling, on pure optimism, instead of on solid, productive value. And bit by bit, all those choices start to build up an economic structure that's just not sustainable. So if the expansion is what builds up the problems, then the contraction must be the solution. Let's dig into that in Section 4, Recessions as a Correction Mechanism. Think of the economy like a garden. During an expansion, everything's growing like crazy. The flowers, the vegetables, but so are the weeds. The recession is the painful but totally necessary process of weeding that garden. It clears out the inefficient businesses that shouldn't be there, it reduces debt, and it reallocates resources back to more productive uses, so the healthy parts of the economy can grow stronger. And history has shown us a pretty important lesson here. It's always tempting to try and prevent any and all downturns, but it turns out, when governments and central banks suppress these natural corrections, they don't solve the underlying problem. They often just let those imbalances get bigger and bigger, which can lead to a much more severe correction down the line. This all brings us to our conclusion, to a new way of looking at this difficult but essential part of the cycle. This is the functional downturn. So let's just quickly recap the main points. Economies operate in cycles. It's just what they do. Those good times, the expansions, they naturally create imbalances. Then recessions come along to act as a necessary correction. Their whole function is to reallocate resources to better uses and ultimately to reset the entire system for healthier growth in the future. Which leaves us with this final powerful idea. It's not about saying recessions are a good thing. Nobody wants the hardship they cause. It's about understanding their role in the system. As the thinking goes, recessions are therefore not desirable, but they are functional, a tough but maybe necessary part of the whole economic story.